and welcome to the Manly Training Show. My name is Eduardo Quintana, I'm your host, and today I want to talk about why men hate going to church. That's right, you heard me correctly. Men hate going to church. I read a book by David Murrow this week, and it's called Why Men Hate Church. And I don't want to go verbatim over this book. I don't really want to go over everything that went in there. But there's some things in here that are very important that I want to highlight. And this is part of what we're doing here at Manly Training. You see, Christianity is pretty much the only major religion in which more women attend the place of worship than men do. You see, what seems to be the problem? Why are men not going to church? As a matter of fact, men when you ask them, they're like, yeah, I go to church. Some of them do. Others don't even bother going to church. Few men from the churches that I've visited, have told me things such as, I come here mainly because of my wife and my children, but church really doesn't enthrall me as much as it does them. Most men don't involve themselves in the church activities or ministries. I'm lucky to say that my church is one of those in which there are several men ministering and serving and volunteering and doing things, and it's a wonderful church. But most churches across America have a lack of men, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So who's the gospel touching today? It's mostly women. See, there's women's retreats and women's breakfasts, women's ministries, women's conferences, women's Bible studies. All of this is synonymous with church nowadays. But very few churches have something going on for the men. And if there is something going on for the men, it's usually like a once a year or twice a year little pancake breakfast or a little retreat of some sort or a little gathering. But it's not something that's going on frequently. It's not something that the men are participating in as often as they should. But one thing I don't understand, why is it that the church of the first century, in a sermon, fiery sermon by Peter, mesmerized all the men there to the point where 3,000 men were converted to Christianism? Where is that church today? Today's church? It doesn't mesmerize men. It repels them. Just 35% in America say they attend church regularly. And in Europe, it's even worse. It's closer to 5%. Now, this hardly sounds like that male-dominated, patriarchal institution that many so-called Christian haters paint us to be. Men's disinterest in Christianity is so consistent all around the world that it cannot be explained by pride, by father issues, sin, or distraction. It can't be explained by any of these things. See, male and female participation is roughly equal in religions such as Judaism and Buddhism and Hinduism and Islam. In the Islamic world, men are publicly and unashamedly religious, but not so with the Christians. Why is that? So let's look into the reason why men hate going to church. See, Christianity is still growing worldwide, but it's losing ground to two aggressive competitors, secularism and Islam. Secularism is the de facto religion of Europe. And rationalism, materialism, anarchy, and radical environmentalism, global warming, all of these are some of the ways that it guises itself. Now, all of this is on the rise in America as well. You see, the number of unchurched American men who don't attend services has doubled since 1991 through 2004. And from 2004 to 2018, it's almost tripled. That's alarming. Let's talk about Islam. Islam is right now the world's fastest growing religion. It's also enormously popular with men. Since 1950, the number of Christians in the world has doubled, but the number of Muslims has more than tripled. You see, Islam is growing worldwide. It's made its strongest inroads, however, in the African American community. See, more than 90% of the converts here in America over to Islam are African American male. Now, one of these men, when interviewed and asked why he grew up in a traditional Baptist church and why he had converted over to Islam, he said, quote, "In Islam, I find a strong sense of brotherhood and moral discipline and of manhood." You see, Islam is on the rise, and I believe it's because of their ability to capture the hearts of the men. Now let's talk about the Christian church for a second. The typical churchgoer in America is a woman. The U.S. Congressional Life Survey pegs her as a 50-year-old, married, well-educated, employed female. The weekly gap between the genders in America is roughly 13 million. That's right. There's roughly 48 million women going to church on Sundays, regular churchgoers, to 35 million men. What does this mean? Well, there are more women, 61%, in the pews than men, just 39%. Today, 20 to 25% of America's married church-going women regularly attend without their husbands. Younger churches, well, they seem a little more successful in attracting men and retaining them, and this suggests that as the church ages, it loses its men and it's unable to attract more. I wonder why. Let's analyze this. Think of the need of a young church. A startup congregation needs men's gifts. Risks need to be taken. Plans need to be made. Buildings must be built. Men love this stuff. Men have a lot to offer to a young church. But as the congregation ages, it begins to value the feminine gifts such as nurturing and stability and close-knit community. Not that these are bad, not at all, but they stifle the masculine gifts. Now, there are two kinds of men in the church. There are the pillars, and then there are the caterpillars. Let me explain. The pillars are the ones that uphold the church with their prayers, their work, and their donations. They build the kingdom of God by their sweat of the brow. The caterpillar crawls in on Sunday morning, sings a few songs, listens to a sermon, and then crawls out again, never to be seen again for a whole week. If your church is typical, the pillars in your church are women. That's right. Listen to these stats. Women are 100% more likely to get involved in discipleship. 100%. Women are 57% more likely to participate in adult Sunday school. Women are also 54% more likely to participate in small groups and 46% more likely to disciple someone else. Now listen, women are 39% more likely to have a devotional or quiet time. Men, listen to me. Are you starting to feel the pinch here? Are you thinking about you and your wife or your mother, whoever the woman is around you? Are they more likely to do these things than you? Let me tell you, there's a problem with that. Women are also 33% more likely to volunteer for church. They're 29% more likely to read the Bible, 29% more likely to attend church, 23% more likely to donate, and 16% more likely to pray than men. Men, there's something wrong. Booksellers know this. They know these stats. And they know that women buy 75% of all the Christian products out there. That's why when you walk into a Christian store, it's all intended and geared towards women. It's very feminine. They work hard to create an atmosphere of femininity. They even know that women write most of the Christian books. Now, these are some alarming stats. But let me tell you, There's a bigger problem in the church today than just the fact that more men tend to not want to go to church and women are more involved in the ministry and stuff. And this is in general in the United States. But there's a bigger problem than that. That if we attach this next problem I'm going to mention to the fact that men aren't attracted to go to church, it compounds and makes it worse. You see, churchgoers are more likely to have a passive personality than the population in general. While there was a study done on passive personalities, and while 62% of the general population has a passive personality, get this, a whopping 85% of churchgoers have a passive personality. Well, what are the implications of this imbalance? I'll tell you what it is. Any institution that is so heavily tilted towards passivity will in itself become passive. So it will tend to value tradition over and stability over innovation and growth, and the church becomes stagnant. There's a leadership crisis right now in America, in the churches in America, because the passive are the ones who are leading. Men aren't attracted to going to church when the church is passive. When the only thing that you need to do is walk in and sing a few songs and sit down and hear a sermon and walk out. If that's the only thing that's in there for church for me as a man, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with it. But if now it becomes an issue of having healthy male role models in the church and an issue of discipleship and learning and becoming better and growing, and if we add other things onto that, like the need for other people to come serve, maybe I can play the guitar, and maybe I can be a part of a praise and worship team. Maybe I have the ability and the know-how and the training to be with children, and I can go be a Sunday school teacher for the children. You see, once we start getting involved, church is no longer insignificant. Church becomes an important part of the male psyche, the male experience, and more men will want to be in our churches. This is a call to action for all the leaders and pastors of churches across America. We've had enough of passive churches. We've had enough of just going to church on Sunday, listening to a sermon, singing a few songs, and going home for a week. There has to be much, much more if it's going to attract men to church.